Okay, so let's go ahead and focus on building out these highlights in the subheader. So they are going to be quite interesting because we are going to have to use the stock data set and create some functions that operate on that data set to determine which highlights we are going to be displaying here. But first, we need to actually build out the markup. So let's head over to our editor and we'll go ahead and create a new component in source components and we'll call it highlights. And we'll create a CSS file as well. And let's go to our highlights file and create a component. And make sure we import our styles. And we'll give the highlights a styles highlights class and we'll return a hello world example. And now we'll go to our stock view and make sure that we import the highlights and put that into our subheader. And make sure we just clean up the imports a little bit so that it all makes sense logically. So if we go to our, alright, so no such, let's go back here, let's see, so highlights.jsx, hit save, hit refresh, and when nothing else works, let's just restart our development server because I'm pretty sure there is a component there and now it's having a problem resolving it, so we need to add components. Alright, so here we have our components. Now you'll see that it's pushed all the way to the right hand side, and that is because we have a flex container here and it's set to space between. So when we only have two elements, the one element will be pushed to the left hand side and another one will be pushed all the way over to the right hand side. So we'll tackle that when we add our final element in the subheader, but for now let's just focus on getting the highlights on the screen. So we'll go back to our highlights and we'll start building out the markup here. So we'll have an h1 which is going to be our header, and then we'll have a highlight div, or actually we'll have a container that's going to contain all of our highlights. So let's go ahead and build a single highlight now. So we're gonna have a div with a class of highlight, and then if we go to our sketch file, you can see we have a icon and we have a text. So that's kind of the make of this markup. So we need to add these icons, and I've already imported them into the project, but we need to also import them into this component. So let's go ahead and import React component as chart icon, and then we'll give the path. And then we'll import the piggy bank. And we'll also import the star. All right. So inside each highlight, we want to have a div with a class name of styles icon container. And then we'll give the chart icon here, and that'll have a class name of styles icon. And then underneath we'll have a paragraph, and here we'll add the text, and we'll grab that from our sketch file. So let's go ahead and grab this, put that in here. And that is the make of a single highlight. So we'll grab that and we'll add another one, and we'll change this out with piggy bank, and we'll grab the text from sketch. And put that in here. And we'll add a final one. And that's going to be the star. And we'll grab the text from here as well. Okay. So let's go ahead and see what we have. And now our site is looking horrendous. So let's go ahead and start applying some CSS and try to make it a little bit prettier. So open up our highlights module CSS, and we'll get started by first adding a color to our highlights, and then we'll add a font size to our header, which is going to be the H1 font size that we have in our index CSS file. So let's go ahead and copy that and put that in here, and then we'll say font weight normal. And then we'll have the surrounding container. So that's going to be display flex and a flex direction of column. And what that'll do is it'll take all of our highlights and just make sure that they are placed underneath each other. Which we might not even need that. Let's go ahead and remove that for now and just continue styling the highlight here. So that will be display flex because we want the icon to be on one side and the text on another. Alright, so we have something like this now. And let's go ahead and save. I want to make sure that we have the correct class. Looks like I made a little typo here. So now it's all white. And we want to say, let's say that the max width is 300 pixels for now. Alright, so let's go ahead and style the icon. So I want the icon container to have a border radius 50% and a padding of 7 pixels and a background color of white and a margin right of 8 pixels And then I'll go ahead and grab the icon. And we'll say that the width is 12.5 pixels and the height is also the same. And the fill is going to be primary blue. So remember, this is an SVG icon, so we can't just say color. We have to use the fill property in order to give the correct styling to this element. Alright, so let's go back and just see what we have. We have something like that. And let's just go ahead and see if we can't. Let's see. Let's go ahead and say 24 and 24. Oops. Pixels, that's a little bit too much. So let's go ahead and reduce that to 20. Alright, that's looking a little bit better. So let's go ahead and copy that and go to our CSS file. Put that in our icon class. And now we want to add a little bit of margin to our highlight, and we also want to align items center. Because if we go ahead and just see now, you can see that the text is not lining up exactly with the icon, and we want to make sure that it lines up. So we'll give a align items of center, and we'll have a margin top and bottom of 10 pixels here, and we'll give the container a margin top as well. So that might be too much, we'll see. Alright, so I'm not sure I want to have, let's see here. So let's go ahead and go to the highlights and remove the margin on the left hand side. So we'll give 10 pixels to every side except the left hand side. Alright, so I want to increase this a little bit, and let's see what else. Let's increase the margin right a little bit on this icon container. So I guess we are nitpicking a little bit now, so let's just move on. What I want to do now is I want to go to the highlights, and we are hard coding these highlights right now, so we should create a new component called highlight, and we're going to create it inside of the highlights component, and we'll create a functional component here called highlight, and what we'll do is we'll take the markup for highlight and we'll put that inside of its own components. And then what this will accept is a type and text. And we'll make sure to return our markup. And then we'll have a function here that says get icon. And based on the type, we are going to retrieve an icon. So let's go ahead and copy these over. and we'll import the styles here as well. And okay, so based on the type, we are going to retrieve one of these icons. So we're going to say if type growing dividends return the chart icon, and we'll add the class name here. And we'll do get icon, and we'll say else if type equals consistent dividends, we'll return the piggy bank icon, and we'll give it the same class name. And we'll add a check for ranking, and we'll return the star icon, and we'll give that a class name of icon as well. Alright, and then inside of the paragraph we'll put our text. And now we're going to make sure that we render these out dynamically. So what we'll do is we'll create an array here called highlights, and it's going to be filled with objects with type and text. So first we'll add the growing dividend yield, and it's going to be type growing dividends. Let's just make sure that they are the same. And then we'll add and make sure our import paths are correct, because remember now we moved them one folder up, so they need to line up. And these are no longer existing here, so we need to finish this before our compiler is going to stop complaining. Alright, so next will be consistent dividends, so that'll be the type, and the text will be this text right here. And the last one will be an object with the type of ranking, and the text is going to be this right here. So let's go ahead and remove all of our highlights from this component, because now we've created a new one that encapsulates all of that logic. And what we want to do is we want to take this array and we want to build up the highlight from this array. So we're going to say const render highlights, and that's going to be a function, and we'll return highlights.map item, or let's just say highlights, and we'll return a component like we just created, and we'll plug in the type, which is going to be highlight.type, because we are using this object to iterate over. And the text is going to be highlight.text. And we'll give it a key. And that's going to be the highlight.type. And make sure we return this. And we can now plug this into our container. And that should make sure that we have the same thing as before. And we do. So if we take a look at what's actually going on, we have an array of highlights, and it consists of objects with a type and a text property. And what we're doing is we're taking this array and we're mapping over it, and for each item we are creating a new component, and that's the component that we just created, where we just encapsulated all of the highlight logic. So inside of the highlight component, we're accepting a type and text, and then based on the type we are returning the correct icon, and then we're just rendering out the icon and the text. So we're doing the same thing as before, but now we're not hard coding it. Now we are dynamically rendering it based on the contents of an array. And the next part of this puzzle is going to be taking the data set that we have here and plug that data set into a function that will determine what kind of highlights we are going to create for that stock. And then we'll return a new array from that function, and that'll make it pretty dynamic in terms of what highlights we are going to display per stock. So that should be pretty interesting, and we'll tackle that in the next video.